been a week of tears, a bit of fear, and probably some irrational anger. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast as we have Valentine's weekend here, Sunday, February the 16th. If you were with someone this weekend, I hope that you had a nice time and lots of candy was eaten or whatever was needed. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. You could also like us on Facebook, The Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, podcast_hockey. And officially, we usually BS you, but now it is true. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Google Podcasts. We are on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So subscribe, leave nice reviews, tell your friends and family about us, and we would appreciate it. We have with us Devin is with us. Hello, Devin. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Kev?
Good. I'm good. I have my coffee. Do you have your coffee?
Americano.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. All right. I just have my Tim Hortons coffee, but I still think that
I'm fancy. What can I say?
I am not fancy. Sean, are you fancy?
Oh yeah. We enjoying a nice coffee from a new coffee machine right now, actually.
Oh, well, nice. That's good. Heidi, are you enjoying that same cup of coffee?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. I'm enjoying my new coffee maker that you can just program and it has coffee ready for you at whatever time you think you might be out of bed.
I want that. That would be awesome. I think I should get that for myself. But I enjoy the walk to Tim Hortons. Chris, how are you?
I'm well, and I feel like I am the only person not aided by caffeine this morning.
I'm proud of you, man. I think we should just applaud Chris for being uncaffeinated. That is impressive because it's hard to do. I was trying to cut down. One of my goals going to school was cut down on caffeine, and that didn't work.
It's not a thing to do while you go to school, Kevin.
That was one of my first lessons. You don't do that.
Although, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy being aided by caffeine. It's just the fact that I didn't want to roll out of bed until the very last moment that I had to. So I had no opportunity to go get coffee.
That's fair.
You need one of those coffee machines too there, Chris.
Yeah, probably.
If you ever, so there you go. If you ever want to buy us all a present, get us a coffee machine. There.
Well, speaking of coffee, one of the things that came out of the Ryan Kesler apology tour was that he discovered coffee after his fourth kid.
Oh.
And apparently that's why he was such a grumpy asshole when he was with the Canucks.
Oh, good grief. Took him 4 kids? Jeez. Maybe he needed to go to BCIT and take the radio program. He would have been, he would have been better.
Yeah.
We will get to Ryan Kesler, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's hard not to begin with. I actually kind of feel as the week went on, this got a little bit. Actually ended up being flown under the radar a little bit more than I think it should have been, in my opinion. And it was when we were recording on Tuesday night, and you can check that out, the recap of the 2010-2011 season for the Vancouver Canucks. We got a message from Heidi that Boumeester had collapsed on the bench, and they ended up postponing the game. And I don't know if there's anything really to debate specifically about this, because it's a very sad story, and it was on the Blues' father's trip. In terms of that, and it's Boumeester's likely done for the season, quite possibly for his career, unfortunately, and it's very fortunate that he is still with us. He played 4 seasons with the Flames, 3 goals in 2009, 2010, 2011, 4 goals, 2011-12, 5 goals, and then in the lockout year, 2012-2013, 6 goals before he was traded to the St. Louis Blues. And quite likely he will be a Hall of Famer with the St. Louis Blues, which, just as a side note, means that the Flames gave 2 Hall of Fame defensemen to the St. Louis Blues during their time. That's an entire side point. Excuse me. But kind of get your thoughts. Maybe we'll start with Devin. Thoughts on... if you want to talk about the situation or what happened, that's great. But the thoughts of Jay Boumeester and who he was or who he is and kind of how you remember him. It sounds kind of like we're memorializing him, but
yeah. Well, it's a sad, obviously a very sad incident that happened, and like you said, Kevin. Thankfully, it was on his dad's the father's trip, so his dad was able to be carted with him to the hospital. And yeah, I don't remember him too much as a Flame. He was a highly touted defenseman, and I know he came in with a lot of hype, and he didn't really live up to that hype. I'm happy to hear that he's okay, and that surgery went well, and hopefully he can get back out. Soonish back on skates. But you know what? If he does call it a career, he had a great career, gold medals, Stanley Cup, and I think that if there's any question in his health, I think that he should hang him up, and because he doesn't really have any more to prove, and he has a family that he has to think about. So it's really unfortunate, but I'm happy that things are looking up.
Anyone else?
Yeah, from my perspective, just everything Devin said, and it just when as I said, like I was listening to you guys record your thing on Tuesday night, and I just happened to be on Twitter and see this come up, and as soon as you see that happen, like I flashed back to the incident with TJ Brody back in, I believe that was November, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a scary situation when you hear things like you hear tweets coming out from people at the rink saying, stretchers and like possibly like they had like tents set up and just all that kind of stuff. And so, it's a scary situation and you don't know. And you hear things like defibrillator and you don't know. And obviously him being a former Flame too. Like, so that kind of hit me as well. But yeah, as I said, like it's glad to hear that he is alive and he seems relatively okay. His surgery went smoothly by the sounds of it. I haven't heard too much updates other than that, whether he's still in the hospital or not. I think it was a good idea that they did postpone the game after as well, because I don't think it was fair to the players on either side to continue that game. So, and I'm hoping for the best for him, whether he's going to be able to come back or not. Like, he's in my thoughts for sure.
Yeah, he's 36 years old. As Devin said, he's won a cup, he's won gold medals. He really needs to just look at long-term health and quality of life as he grows older at this point. So, if he's lucky enough to be able to come back and make one or two more seasons, that'd be great. But I think it really should be just about his quality of life going forward at this point. And he's had a great career. And then one person I want to really shout out would be Darren Pang.
Yes.
I think he did fantastic. Sort of following up after that happened and trying to keep everyone up to date. Like I said, we were recording, so we didn't see it live, but seeing the replays of that and the replays of Darren talking about what's going on and just communicating everything from what the Ducks were communicating to him, the Blues and the league. I think he did a fantastic job. You could tell he was struggling too, and he deserves a huge round of applause for that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add because obviously I agree with everyone else's sentiments that they've expressed so far. The only thing that I basically could add is that I appreciated the classy response from every other team in the league, just basically putting out a tweet saying that their thoughts and their prayers were, towards him and his family and hoping for the best. So obviously it just makes you feel good that everyone is on board and that everyone realizes it's more than just a game, that this is someone's life that was on the line. So, yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully whatever happens with Jay Boumeester going forward, all the best to him and his family, all the best to the Blues as they go forward. I can't imagine. Even and the Ducks as well, and you could clearly see that they were distracted playing the Flames on Thursday. So it affected them as well. So we also are thinking, not that Boumeester's obviously not a teammate, but seeing that that has an effect as well. So, and it's also a good reminder to make sure that someone around you has CPR training or you get it yourself, because that helped as well. So, all the best to Jay Boumeester going forward.
That and make sure when you're out and about, where the defibrillator is at.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Now that reminds me I have to ask at a place I'm at where that is. So thank you for reminding me. Yes. All right. Wednesday, we had... it was a kind of a combination, really ended up kind of funny enough being a combination of two things. It was the 10-year anniversary of the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics in Vancouver. Does everyone remember where they were for that?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. At least.
How could you forget?
I don't remember where I was at home. I remember being at home for that.
I think I was in Winnipeg, actually, or not in Winnipeg. I was in small town Manitoba. I was visiting family there, and I watched a lot of those Olympics while visiting family in Manitoba that week.
Where was everyone? Chris, you were in Vancouver?
I was still working at the airport as a baggage handler back then. So the opening ceremonies in particular, I had my laptop with me on the security side and was live streaming the opening ceremonies on my laptop with several other employees huddled around my computer.
I had a hockey game, and we caught up halfway through the opening ceremonies at the pub after the game.
Yeah, I was just at home watching it. It was very cool.
Yeah. So there was that, and then we had the Sedin retirement ceremony. 22 and 33 were lifted to the rafters. I'll just start by saying I think that this was one of the better ceremonies that I have seen put forward for, and understanding here that there's not one but two players that are involved in this. I personally thought this was really well done. First, we'll get to the speeches here in a moment, but I thought John Shorthouse did a really great job emceeing this. They brought out the right people to do the right things. It struck the right tone. I thought it was first class all the way around.
Yeah, the Sedins are just they're exceptional. They're one of a kind or two of a kind players who just transcended transcended hockey and became just amazing citizens of Vancouver. I think, and then you throw in Bieksa and the roast of everyone that he was doing. I just think it was fun. I expected to cry, but I didn't expect to cry from laughter.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either.
Yeah, it was the full gamut of emotions, for sure.
Heidi, Devin, did you have a chance to see this ceremony?
Yep, I was watching it with Sean, so we were both sitting here, and just like me having a little bit different perspective of not being a Canucks fan, not having that same connection to the Sedins. I thought I've seen a couple of retirement ceremonies and stuff, just for like some of the Flames and things like that and different players. But like I thought it was just a really good ceremony, as you said. Like Shorthouse emceeing it was great. I know we'll talk about this after, but BX's speech was probably my favorite. It was really good, and even like it got me a little bit teared up, both from like actual emotion and from laughing as well.
Yeah, it was really well done, first class all the way. Definitely gave me chills. The one criticism that I have is that Bobby Lou didn't speak, and I thought that if he did, he would have done a really good job. But I mean, how well Bieksa spoke, it would be really hard to follow that. So that'd be my one criticism. But I mean, it's not even a criticism. It was a beautiful ceremony, and everybody did a good job. Like I said, first class all the way.
Oh, I got a phone call. Hang on. Hello? Oh, hi, Henrik and Daniel. Yeah, we're recording a podcast. Okay. Yeah, I'll let him know. Thanks. Okay. Sean, Chris, Henrik, and Daniel say thank you for being fans. They didn't mention that during the ceremony, but they wanted to let you know. Thank you for being fans. So.
Well, they did thank damn near everyone that had ever played with them or had managed them or had assisted them in their careers. So, yeah, it's nice to be included.
And I also think I thought it was a great touch, especially to touch on Tortorella and Desjardins. Tortorella, I think, especially because it was only 1 year, it really was a year that caused a lot of friction in Canuck Nation because of a lot of things. But I think it was great, and it's just a sign of the type of human beings that Henrik and Daniel were thanking John Tortorella.
I think something that went highly unreported that season was actually the Sedins appreciated how much Torts pushed them. And they actually enjoyed playing under him, whereas a lot of the media tends to have a very Torts is like an anti-player sort of coach. So just the fact that it was underreported that they actually enjoyed playing under him, I thought was interesting. And that obviously that's why they gave him the nod in this.
Yeah, Torts is an interesting coach because he's so gruff and standoffish, but he'll go to bat and he'll swing for the fences to defend his players. So I'm not surprised that they were quite appreciative of him because both Kessler and Bieksa both have said the same as well. So I wasn't surprised that they thanked everyone and even Torts and Willie, which were two of the better responses from the fans too during the ceremony.
Speaking go ahead.
To expand on Tortorella, I know we're talking about the Sedins, but I was listening to Corey Sarch on 960 talking about who the best coaches or the best coaches he was able to get coach from, and everybody. He was a part of the Tampa Bay winning the Cup, back in 2004, which all Flames fans know and remember very well. But anyways, I just want to say that he was everybody on that team said that the best coach that they ever had was Tortorella. So it was really nice that the Sedins kind of brought that full circle too.
Yeah, I agree. I think. It'll be an interesting legacy that John Tortorella leaves behind, because I think it's I think there's been a perception, and then there's another perception as well. But to get to the cheering part, let's start with Mike Gillis, because this was Mike Gillis's first appearance in Vancouver since he left. The first time that the fans could at least acknowledge him. And it was nice to hear him get a cheer. Was that a good thing?
I think it should have, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fans did a great job from Gillis and onwards to show appreciation for everyone who, because a lot of that's from the 2010, 2011 team and how close they got. Like, I think as we age and time goes on, we appreciate how good that team was and how important all those players and management and coach were to making that team so good.
Anyone else have anything to add before we get to the big meat of this one? One of the big meats of this one.
Sean kind of nailed it, so I don't really have much more to add. Nope.
Okay. We didn't get a chance to delve deep into this, and I think it's good that we have Heidi and Devin here to do it, because Ryan Kesler is a polarizing figure. We were chatting off. We just chatted earlier that it took Ryan Kesler 4 children to have to discover coffee. He did not necessarily endear himself to Canuck fans when he left. He certainly did not endear himself to Flames fans when he played with the Canucks or the Ducks. But he got his standing ovation. He did his, as Sean called, his apology tour. I want to go from the opponent side first, just to get a perspective on we'll start with Heidi. Just your perspective of Ryan Kesler.
Well, as I mentioned here time and time again, like, I'm still like a relatively like noob Flames fan. Like, it's only been a big thing for me for a few years, but like with Kesler, and same thing like with Bieksa too. It's like I feel like one of the first things that I learned, quote unquote, learned about being a Flames fan is that you hate Kesler. It's supposed to be just ingrained in you to hate the guy, but I don't know. I thought it was good to see, like, getting a little bit more. I needed to ask a little bit about some of the background and stuff of what was going on and why it was a little bit controversial. But it was great too that he was there and everything that went on, and because it was just not an appropriate time for there to be fights and controversy and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was really nice to see. He didn't leave on good notes, but I mean, he was a huge part of the team for a very long time. One of the reasons why he's so hated is because he was a good player. He was a great player and one of the better shutdown centermans that could produce offense, within the past 10 years or so. And he, as far as like Flames fans go, you have, you're in division and you played them, 6-7 times a year back in the old scheduling. And when he went down to Anaheim, Anaheim is, as Kevin said before, the House of Horrors down there, and the Flames weren't successful at all down there for years, and it was very fitting for Bieksa and Kesler to kind of go to that team from a Flames side. But it was really good to see, and like Heidi said, it's not a time or a place to really show your dislike for that person. It's more about celebrating the Sedins, and it was nice to see.
Sean, Chris, were you nervous that he was going to get booed?
There was slight nerves there, but ultimately I think it goes to show just how much respect everyone had for the Sedins, that everyone is willing to put all their issues and discrepancies and whatnot aside for the love and appreciation that they had for the Twins.
I figured he wouldn't get booed, especially with the Kess and Juice podcast being popular, and then him doing his apology tour on radio and everything and in media, and showing the humility that he did beforehand, saying that he was nervous about it, saying that he wished he could have done things better, and done things slightly differently in terms of how it happened and how he left. I think there's there's definitely a group of fans and that aren't ever going to be able to just put it behind them and not be able to cheer Kessler, and that's fine. I completely understand why, but I think for the majority of people still have gotten to the point where it's been 9 years since the Cup run. It's been a handful of years, more than a handful of years since the trade happened. So I think there's time and humility will heal most wounds. So I think most people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and cheer him, because he was such a huge part of that team and such a huge part of the success the Canucks had back then. He was a grumpy player, a player who got underneath the opposing team's skins and was chirping and crossed the line a few times on the chirping and crossed the line a few times on embellishing, but he still scored 40 goals one season. He was a Selke nominee for multiple seasons and a winner once. Like, it's just, you can't, they wouldn't have gotten to the success that they had without him. So you have to respect him for that and respect the Sedins for wanting him to get some redemption.
Yeah, I would I agree. Yes, I agree that I didn't think that there would be boos. I thought a lot of the apology tour certainly helped, or the apologies and his conversation certainly helped. The other one before we get into something that BX has said, Trevor Linden, I thought did probably one of his best deeks of his entire career this week when Dan Murphy asked him about his time as president in Vancouver, and he just basically deflected and said, "Well, I'm just here we're Legends Week. I'm here to support everybody." And I think I understand why these questions need to be asked. It's probably not the time and the place, but I did think it was great to hear that standing ovation for Trevor Linden as well, considering what he has been through.
Linden's legacy with the Canucks is very complicated now because of the time he was with the team as president and how he left, being with a quote unquote amicable separation. But the true, like, the fan base as a whole and as a majority, I really think understands who respects him for his playing days and realizes that you have to separate that from the president Trevor Linden. And even then, you look at where they're at now, and even though it didn't go as smoothly as I think anyone really hoped, they wouldn't be where they're at now, on the cusp of hopefully another really good run of competitive hockey. Without having Trevor coming in and bringing Jim Benning in and do it and bringing the players that they have brought in specifically through the draft. So I think there's again, it's just a little bit of we as Canucks fans appreciate Trevor Linden for his playing days and appreciate that what he did as president, while not perfect, still helps the team and the franchise get to where they're at now.
Yeah, Trevor Linden would have to screw up on a massive level for him to not be immortalized by the fans. I feel like no matter what happened with the management side, because of how beloved he was as a captain and as a member of the team when he was in his playing days, that will always be the fondest memories that the fans have, and they will always thank and love him for that. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that he got the ovation that he did, and obviously he's still going to have to deal with some awkward questions when it comes to how his management tenure ended. but like Sean said, he was instrumental as an architect in the early years of this current core that we have. So we very much have to thank him for as good of a team as we have for right now.
And the other thing I think we have to sort of mention is how big of a group are really the ones that are being the loud negative group. I'm not sure it's that big. So just because there's a good, like a handful to maybe even 100 or so fans on social media who are throwing hissy fits every time a move gets made that they don't agree with, doesn't mean that that's the majority of the fan base.
I think the majority of the fan base obviously will always love Trevor Linden. I even think the majority of the fan base, although I think there's there's always going to be questions, I think the majority of the fan base will always love Roberto Luongo. And I do think the majority of the fan base will end up loving Ryan Kesler. But I do think the way that everything kind of happened, I can see I can see why that would be more of the frustration. I think the Kesler situation would have been more of the frustration. I see why fans would have been more frustrated. I don't think you're right. I agree with you. It's not the majority, but the way he left was tough. I think, and kind of the spot that he put Jim Benning in was tough at the time. Really. What
do you mean, Kev?
If I remember correctly, Kesler only wanted to go to Anaheim.
Oh, you're talking Kesler, yeah. That is definitely one of the major reasons why Kesler got so vilified in the market was how he left and how he handcuffed both Gillis and Benning in terms of I'm only going to this spot or these two spots, because I think it was Chicago and Anaheim that he wanted to go to. That being said, there was a trade at the deadline beforehand that didn't get approved by ownership that was, I believe, supposedly better off in terms of return. But because the Accolades were hoping for playoffs still, they weren't sold on making that trade because Gillis was, I think at that point, Gillis was pushing for a full-blown Rangers style burn it down rebuild, because he realized that the window had passed for that group. And the ownership he wasn't able to sell the ownership on it, and he wasn't able to sell the ownership on making that trade. Had that trade happened, then we wouldn't have had to deal with the rest of what happened in terms of Ryan Kesler, and his legacy with the Canucks would have been a lot less tarnished.
I see a lot of similarities in between how Kesler left and how Bray left. Like, obviously, we're beloved by the fans during their time with the team, but the way that they left kind of soured the fans' taste on them. But as we had already discussed, time kind of heals all wounds, and everyone came around on Bray in time for his retirement. And I feel like this past week kind of showed that, fans are starting to turn that corner in terms of Kesler. So, that was my point.
Yeah, if the fan base is willing to come around and give Bure the respect he deserves, they'll come around and give Kesler the respect he deserves, because Bure, we have to remember, Bure actually sat out and said he wasn't going to play. And put the Canucks in a rough situation that way. So both didn't have great exits, but both are very key, important figures in franchise history. You can't talk about the 2011 Cup run and that team without talking about Kesler. He's in the top, I would say, 3 or 4 players of that team. So you can't
no.
without Kessler, they're not. They don't make the playoff. They don't make to make it to the Cup Finals. They don't make it to the heights that they did. So whether no matter how upset you are about how he left, you have to respect that. You don't have to like him, but you have to respect what he did for this organization and this franchise.
Yeah, and I also want to add that I don't want to put Kessler and Burry on the exact same height of pedestal, because to me Burry still is higher. I fully am on board for a Kessler Ring of Honor. I'm just not sure if he's at the same status that he should have his number retired. So the fact that I compared the two, I just didn't want to make people think that I'm putting them at the same level, because Burry is still head and shoulders above.
Yeah, I don't think Kessler is. I don't think his number will be retired. But I could see Ring of Honor. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
If Mattias Olin got Ring of Honor, I think it would be fitting for Kessler.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, that video that they released out, the Canucks did onto Twitter and social media, showing all the old faces reuniting. How giddy were you, Chris?
It was pretty awesome to see that video for sure. I was definitely pinching myself just seeing certain guys that hadn't seen each other in probably 8-10 years or whatever, hugging for the first time and seeing each other, and just it was a pretty good feel-good moment.
So, I think an off-season discussion, by the way, what I want to put aside is where Brian Burke fits in this legacy as well, because I have some thoughts, and in a positive way. I don't have a hot take, but I do have some thoughts on that. But I want to, speaking of bringing people together, speaking of alumni, and speaking of culture, there is a section. Kevin BX's speech we talked about was quite humorous. Lots of things that he said were really funny. But there was something that really struck me personally that I have been sitting and thinking about. And this is really also, I do think this connects to the Flames. I'm going to play it, and then we're going to hear from Brad Marchand. Okay, hang on.
In 20 years, there will still be a Sedin flavor to this organization and a Sedin culture in that dressing room, and that's something that'll transcend any on-ice statistics that they have. So on behalf of all their former teammates, trainers, coaches, management, and the people of Vancouver, we're grateful for who you are. You're the two best players and people to ever wear the Canuck jersey. We love you guys, and there's no one more deserving of this honor. Skol.
All right, so that was basically BX talking about the culture. Now, this is in middle of February. David Pastrnak scored his 40th goal of the year, and they asked Brad Marchand about David Pastrnak. And I do want to just kind of hear what Brad Marchand had to say about Pastrnak and about the Bruins.
You've been there since the beginning.
He's still 5'9". He's really become an elite player in the league. The fact that he's able to continue to find ways to score when teams are really zoning in on him. It's very impressive. There's very few guys in the league that can do that, and he consistently puts up with the abuse and guys shadowing him, and his ability to find ways to score in different situations. It's very impressive. Even his defensive game is continuing to come along, and he cares about that aspect. He wants to win, and he's a great teammate. So he's going to be a level player for a long time.
Astonishing that even with all he's done in the league already, that there still seems to be bigger and better things to him.
Yeah, kind of scary to kind of look at where his ceiling might be. He continues to push it and continues to get better, and so it's fun to watch him. It's fun to play with him. You always have to be on your toes because you never know what he's going to do. I don't even think he knows what he's doing half the time. So it makes it very dangerous for other teams and other players when he's so unpredictable. But yeah, he continues to grow. So I'm excited to see where he's going to be in a couple of years.
Right, how important is it to do the little things in a game like this against a desperate team?
Very important. a lot of our opportunities come from playing the right way. That's kind of our motto in here, is we have to play a very sound game, and when we get it, we transition and we get opportunities to hold on to it down low. But we take a lot of pride in the little areas, and that's what you have to do to win. That's how you win playoff series and playoff games. And you can play that running gun game for a bit in the regular season, but catch you in playoffs.
So there's a couple of different things here about culture and how to build a team, and I'll start with the Canucks here, and then we'll get to the Flames. I think one of the things that is coming across here, and I don't know where the Canucks are specifically at with this, but there is a culture there. There is a culture, I think, that certainly of at least acknowledging and respecting the alumni, and at least developing something that I think they are on the brink of developing a winning culture. Is that fair to say? There's something in that room, in that Canuck dressing room, that's wanting to raise this to another level. Is that fair to say? Am I on track there?
You are. Between having the quiet but powerful leadership of Bo Horvat, who just demands professionalism and expects high-end effort. Then you have the fire and drive of Pettersson, who's always looking to get better and always looking to figure out what he can do. The underrated acquisition of JT Miller, at least on the leadership side, I don't think people realize the effect he's had on both Pettersson and Virtanen, helping them get ready for the next step. I've mentioned this a few times in our discussions. I'm worried about the Canucks when they make the playoffs this year, if they're able to take it to the next level, because there is another level when you reach the playoffs. The games get more intense, the games get heavier, the games get tighter checking, and you need to be able to fight your way through it. But adding JT Miller, who hasn't missed the playoffs in any full season he's played in the NHL, huge. And I don't think anyone talked about that when that trade got made. And then you've got the quiet leadership of Chris Tanev and Alex Edler, and the fieriness of Jacob Markstrom, who expects and demands the players in front of him to play well and play smart. They are on the verge of creating a bit of a high expectation winning attitude and culture in that with this younger core.
Chris?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that my mic was muted. Sean totally nailed that. I have nothing to add.
Okay. Devin and Heidi, we'll get to the Flames here in a second here, but from your perspective, what are you seeing in the Canucks culture that you kind of wish the Flames either have, or are the Flames missing something, or what is it that you're admiring?
Heidi doesn't admire much about the Canucks. Just let's put that out there.
That's not true. I'm just thinking about that. If Devin, if you have something to say, I have to think about that for a minute.
Yeah, I think it the core that is the Canucks is to be admired, and I think it's maybe not talked enough about as we're talking about it, but it is something that seems to be missing with the Flames, and that's what's kind of concerning is the going to the Pasternak. You know, he took less money because he wants to win, and he knows that he's making $8 million a year, but he's a $10 million player, and it just shows leadership skills of wanting to win and knowing what it takes to win. With Bo Horvat, you have a great young leader, and ever since he was drafted, there's whispers and rumblings of him being a captain, or he has what it takes to be a captain, and it obviously shows because of his professionalism and what he brings to the hockey team. And I don't see that same leadership skill inside the core of the Flames. I mean, you have Gio and you have Tkachuk, but your top players still have to be your top players. Pettersson, he can light it up anytime that he wants, and he has that drive and skill and the passion for the game. You can be a good player, you can rely on your skill, but if you don't have the passion, you don't have that drive to come to work each day and be better than you were the day before, being a top athlete and being a top hockey player, then it's going to show in time that you are lacking passion. And those people like the Pasternaks, the Bo Horvats, the Petterssons of the world, you can see that. You can see that flow through their game. So it's as far as the Canucks go, that's perfect for them and what they need, and it's what every hockey team needs. But it does seem to be lacking in the Flames, and it is concerning.
Yeah, I think that's where kind of my brain is going to, me not knowing the players as well on the Canucks, but I am seeing that there doesn't seem to be this kind of, everybody seems to be on the same page there, and just with the Flames, there's not there. You have your guys like Gio and Tkachuk who are good leaders in that room, but it's just some of those other guys that are on the team that are just not quite 100% sure their commitment level, and maybe that's where the issue is. I'll probably go into more of this a little bit later when we get more into the Flames, but there's got to be a reason why this team is so inconsistent, and that might be exactly where it is. It's just there's lack of cohesiveness in the room as a team.
I think part of it is Tkachuk has this, Horvat has this, Pettersson has this, Hughes has this. They know how to be a professional. They know how to be a professional hockey player. And I'm not saying other players don't have it. It's just these guys have it in spades. Hughes and Tkachuk grew up in hockey families. They grew up living and breathing hockey from the day they left the hospital as an infant. They had, both of them have their dads who you had Keith playing in the hockey in the NHL, and you had Jack, you had Hughes's dad who was a coach and was able to coach them into it. Then you've got Pettersson and Horvat specifically, who are just hockey nerds. They love to break down plays and watch other hockey and do that. That's what made the Sedins really good. To bring it back to the Sedins, is they talked about how they would watch hockey and break down plays and see where the tendencies and weaknesses of other players were. I don't hear that about the Flames players outside of Tkachuk.
Yeah, for me. Oh, sorry. Are you done?
Yeah, you go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Yeah. From my observation, it's more of there's more of a team-wide buy-in for the Canucks, whereas versus the Flames, it might be due to the uncertainty with the head coaching change throughout the season and whatnot. But to me, there definitely seems to be more individuals trying to still make their own decisions on the Flames as opposed to a team-wide buy-in. Whereas it seems like Travis and maybe Jim and just the culture that they've built in Vancouver, everyone on that team can see the potential and has bought into that system.
You said the right term there, Chris, buy-in. If you go back to the video of the speech that Travis Green gave right as training camp opened, that was a big term, buy-in. He wants a buy-in. And that's why players like Virtanen have flourished underneath him. That's why they've moved on from players like Bertschy. The players that are there have bought into what needs to happen to be successful under Travis Green's system. And I think one thing that the Flames have had this year that it sucks for the players because it's beyond their control has been the coaching issue. Losing Bill Peters to Bill Peters being an idiot in previous, and then having Jeff Ward come in, the lack of understanding what the system is, understanding what the culture is, I think it has definitely hurt the Flames this season for sure.
It seems to me, from my dual observation, and I wonder if Devin can speak to this as well, following the Leafs, there are certain teams that if you wear this jersey, it used to be the Canadians, not so much anymore, but definitely the Bruins, maybe even the Leafs a little bit, the Canucks to a certain extent, the Oilers previous years, the Islanders previous years. There are certain jerseys that you wore that if you wore it with a sense of pride, and you would be embarrassed losing 8-4 to a team that is basically a lottery team at home. Like, it just wouldn't happen. It's not happening. You're not coming into our rink and scoring 8 goals. Like, you even as a team, if you're a division rival, you will be lucky to get 8 goals in your 2 to 3 games that you've come. It doesn't feel the same way wearing a Flames jersey. I don't feel that there is this pride in wearing a Flames jersey. Like, a deeper question, I think, I think one of the things that has come up for me is I think the way the Flames have treated their alumni compared to the Canucks treated their alumni, night and day. Embarrassingly night and day from a Flames perspective, actually. I just don't see the pride in wearing a Flames jersey. I don't see... maybe I'm missing something, but I don't see it. I don't see it the same way that I see, like, putting on whatever Canuck jersey you won't have. There may be a million of them. But when you're wearing a Canuck jersey, it feels different than wearing a Flames jersey. Am I on a track there?
You definitely are. It just seems like it comes in, like you said, from the top down, from the organization, and it's frustrating to watch. I don't understand, why Theo hasn't had his day, Theo Fleury, and I don't understand how we can. It's about being professionalism. It's about giving the respect of the jersey, of the organization, of the players, and it doesn't seem like it's there. I'm with you, Kev, and it's it just baffles me. I don't understand it. I'm worried about what effect certain players have on a room. I'm worried about the effect of certain coaches that have been there, what that effect has been on the room, and I'm at a loss for words, to be honest. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, I echo Devin on all of those things. It's fascinating to me that some of these players that, yes, like maybe I wasn't around to be like a huge fan of them, like Fleury and stuff like that. The fact that they haven't been, like the Flames have this thing called, like, I think it's called like Forever a Flame. It's like their cop out of actually retiring people, and I think there definitely, could be more players from the past that do deserve that. As for like what you said, Kevin, with like that sense of like pride wearing a Flames jersey, I don't think that's completely lost. I'm only speaking for myself just right at this moment, but like that idea is not lost on me, but it's like I'm getting so frustrated with it, and I think the rest of the fan base is too. Like with just the level of inconsistency with the team. It just makes it hard to do that because you don't know whether when you're putting that jersey on that night to go watch a game at home or with your friends or whatever, that what Calgary Flames are going to show up that night. And but I don't know how, without knowing exactly what the problem is, I don't even know how you even go about fixing that.
As a Canucks fan in Calgary, one of the things I think I've noticed, and I don't know if this has leached into the locker room and made it so this, but the Flames seem so corporate, and with the fight over the new arena and all that, I just don't. It feels very corporate, and I feel like the organization has lost some of its. Just some of the community spirit that helps players build that. I'm wearing this jersey. I need to be proud about wearing this jersey. I need to get out there and just give it all for this team and this community and this city. I don't know if that. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but that's just how I feel. I don't know how. Yeah, I feel like the connection to Calgary has been lost a little bit because of that fight for the new arena, and how the city of Calgary has changed in terms of dynamics and demographics, in terms of what we want from the hockey team. I think had the team gone out and said, okay, we are building a new arena and we are spending as much money of our own money as possible to create this arena, I think that would have helped, and I think that would have helped foster more of a connection with the community. But because the arena is now being funded by taxes and government money, when we're struggling, our economy is struggling, it really makes it hard for the not the hardcore fans, but the casual fans to really connect with this team.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think the arena situation for sure kind of threw that wrench in there, and just knowing that, and maybe this is kind of an issue that I've heard happens in Toronto and stuff too, the level of just people who only go to Flames games because they have tickets through their company and all of that stuff. So there's just that lost kind of connection there. You just go to a Flames game because your boss gave you tickets. It doesn't, there's the lack of those kind of, that kind of, I don't know how many fans that are left in the stands that are your true passionate fans. Are they all just sitting at home now? It's, yeah. And it was even I just remember, when this arena stuff kind of comes and goes, just wearing anything Flames, and people will come up and talk to me and want to know how I feel about the arena. And then I remember even just being on Twitter and stuff, having people say shit to me just because they know that I'm a Flames fan. So obviously I'm in support of the city wasting money on an arena and stuff. That kind of stuff never helped either. Having that idea that because you're a Flames fan that you feel one way, even if you don't, but that's just what people think of you. So yeah, I don't think any of that stuff, the economic situation in Calgary and just kind of things that are just going on, is just not helping.
Yeah, the Flames aren't uniting the fan base. If we go back to the Sedins and how this whole conversation started, the Canucks fan base has been split ever since the fall down of that old core from 2010, 2011 of what to do. You've got I hate using these terms because I think they're stupid, but the bitter bros and the Benning bros. You got people who wanted to tank and people who are just can't do that because that's not built into them as a fan. all that got thrown out the window, and everyone was united into celebrating the Sedins, celebrating that core, and looking forward to the future on Wednesday. That's what's missing from the Flames, I think, is uniting the fan base and making it so that everyone's cheering behind that team instead of bickering amongst themselves in the fan base.
Yeah,
both on a corporate and a fan level. It's just the cohesiveness of it all is the major difference I see between the two organizations.
And going back to Trevor Linden, one of the biggest issues with the Linden and Benning regime was that there was always sort of like conflicting messages between whoever was talking, whether it was Linden or Benning. Now that it's just Benning, whether you agree with it or not, there is a cohesive message that's being told to the fan base. And again, I'm not sure, and that's not necessarily something that's the issue with the Flames, but I do think that there's just something missing in terms of the message to the fans from the Flames organization that's making it hard for the Flames fans to buy in. And I think part of that is definitely the coaching fiasco that happened this year. And maybe this year is just a bit of a one-off, like you got to move on and try and figure out how to turn the corner. But the other issue with the Flames is they're kind of in the middle. Like I've said this, I know Devin and Heidi aren't necessarily agreeing with me on this, but who else besides Giordano do you have on the blue line that's young enough that you think can be a top pair defenseman? Is it Rasmus Andersson? Like other than that, I don't think you really have one. You've got Hanifin and Valimaki, who are both still quite young, but I don't know if they've got top pair potential.
Valimaki does, I think. I mean, Valimaki did.
Yeah, and that's the issue, right? With that knee injury, you don't necessarily know what you have with him. Hanifin, I think, is a really good number 3, but he's also saddled with playing with an anchor that is Hamonic in that second pair. But again, they're stuck in this like weird middle ground where you don't know they're not necessarily super young, they're not necessarily old, but they've got one key piece in Giordano who's older and maybe has one to maybe 3 seasons left. So they should be in win now mode, but I'm not sure what separates them from the rest of the crowd in the Pacific specifically.
I think that they had a good team. I mean, like, look at last year. They had a good team, and how could you not go ahead and give them another chance to kind of replicate what they did last year, you know? And I think, you know, you might be throwing rocks at glass houses here, because like, who else in your system in Vancouver do you have other than Hughes being a up and coming amazing defenseman, a number 1 or number 2 pairing defenseman? Valimaki, he's going to be a top 3 defenseman. He will be. What he has shown on the ice, he's shown that he's able to do that. Anderson has shown this year, and he's stepping up while Giordano's been hurt. Hanifin, he's been highly touted and has been playing ever since he got drafted. He's still young, and he's still showing. I think he's a middle of the pack defenseman, number 2, number 3 pairing defenseman. But like, I don't know. I don't see. You hit on a couple draft picks, and you hope for the best pretty much for as far as like developing a good system and a good base to wrap your team around. I don't know. I just don't. I do disagree with you, Sean. I think there is more here than meets the eye. Shillington is also he's young and he can fly and skate like the wind, but there's still defensive hiccups here and there. So I don't know. it's all microscoped around our core, and it's hard to look past that right now because, like I said, last year at this time, well, maybe not like at this time last year, because right after the CBA break, that's when we kind of Calgary nosedived a bit. But it's I don't know. It's all about what have you done for me lately, not what have you done for me in the past kind of thing. I don't know. I disagree with you, man.
There's two things that organizations can sell to the fan base: success and hope. When you say like throwing rocks at glass houses, the reason that there's a major difference between Gio and Hughes. Hughes is a rookie who's playing at a Norris level as a rookie. Gio had an amazing Norris season last year, but he's in his mid-30s. So again, it's just like he's got 2 or 3 left, and then you just have a bunch of question marks on whether or not they can make it. Again, it's just I don't see the hope being at at a level where that's galvanizing the fans, or the success that's galvanizing the fans. Right now, that's what's really interesting about the Canucks right now is there's hope because you have Hughes and Pettersson who are in their early 20s. You've got another top 10 pick in Podkolzin coming through in the next couple of years. You've got Höglander that's just absolutely lighting up, like looking really promising. You've got all these like really nice young pieces that are high end pieces. They have the pedigree. While the Flames, a lot of those pieces are already on the team, and they're good pieces. You've got a really good top 6 center in Monahan. Elias Lindholm's been an absolute revelation ever since he's been traded over. Hannafin's been a good piece, but they're all just good pieces. There's nothing that separates them right now. Tkachuk is really the only one, and then Rittich when he's on, but he's been so inconsistent of late that you can't really. There's nothing to galvanize the fan base right now. Whether it is the hope, the success, the pride of wearing the Flames jersey, like there's nothing there. Nothing enough to make you feel like make you feel like going out and defending your team in a major, like in a discussion at the bar, unless you're like a hockey nerd like all of us.
Like, to me, both teams have their deficiencies, especially on defense. But to me, the major difference is the fact that the Canucks have the youth factor to their advantage right now, whereas the Flames core might be a little bit on the older side, with the exceptions of like the Tkachuks and the Valimakis and the Andersons. But like the hope and the hope for the future is the thing that the Canucks have in spades that the Flames are struggling with, is my observation.
And Dev, I don't blame the Flames for going at it with the same core again after last year. There was no other choice other than maybe doing some tinkering around the edges to try and add more things, but add something else, because they had a great season last year. And then, like I said, I think part of the issue this season has been the coaching, and they need to fix that. Whether it is giving the full this you are the head coach to Jeff Ward, or bringing in someone else as the full-time head coach, because I do think that maybe there's an issue with Jeff Ward just being the interim coach.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I wasn't comparing Hughes to Gio. I mean, that's a big age gap. Hughes is he's going to be a world-class defenseman, and you can't really. I mean, what I was trying to get at with throwing rocks at glass houses was that you hit on Hughes' picking Hughes. You hit hard on him, and I think the ratio of hitting on first round draft picks is like, one out of 3 will make an impact on your team. And yeah, I mean, like I think the Canucks are in a better situation than the Flames, and it is frustrating to see. Yeah, just the lack of give a shit, the lack of I feel like Tree Living. I believe in Tree Living, but it's getting harder to believe in him and what he's trying to build around the team with the lack of. The lack of trades, the lack of moves, the lack of, showing us that you are doing something. It's always like, oh, you are in the mix. You are so close every single time, but it just seems like he's snake bitten, or, there's always something better on the table that he can't bring and he doesn't want to throw in. So, yeah, I mean, the Canucks do have a better core going forward than the Flames. It's just that I guess my passion is coming out and wanting to believe that there is still something here, which there is. And it's hard to compare, apples and oranges, because you do have an aging core, or you do have a core in Calgary, but you can't trust them because of the lack of passion.
Well, yeah, and it is fascinating. I mean, I think there's so many other things. We didn't get into Ken King. I think the fact that Ken King went on a Toronto radio station to basically say, if the Flames don't get an arena, we won't threaten, we'll just leave. He didn't talk to the Calgary media about that. I think Ken King still being in the Flames organization, I still think rubbed Flames fans the wrong way. I don't think that has been talked about enough. He was the key villain in the arena conversation, so much so that when it was brought back, we didn't hear from Ken King. Like, it was a mind-numbingly embarrassing PR disaster that Ken King was, and that never got fixed. I think of Joe Nieuwendyk, Gary Roberts, Gary Suter, Jamie McCowan, Rick Natras, Ville Nieminen, Joel Otto, Jim Poplinski, Tim Hunter. There is a number of Reggie Lemelin, Mika Kiprusoff, that I don't think have gotten a proper honor from the Flames organization for what they did. Doug Gilmour. There's this. It just feels to me that this organization, I kind of agree with Sean, that it's been so corporate that they have lost their soul. I think that's, and I think the Canucks this week, we saw their soul, and I think it just was such a stark difference to me that I think it was telling.
I think, yeah, you look at it's the Flames' 40th season, and there's like all the theme nights are bobblehead nights.
Yeah, yep.
As opposed to the Canucks who have decade nights where they come out and they have, like, they had 70s night. They had 70s night, and then they had like one guy come out and skate, like, from the 70s. Like, come on. You had 80s night where you had Stan Smeel come out on skates. And you had 90s night where you had McLean come out in his old gear. You had Greg Adams come out in full gear on skating. Like, they're going to have 2000s night. They're going to have the West Coast Express come out in full gear, most likely. Like, it gives you chills as a fan who's gone through that. And one of you're going through all those names, Kev.
Yep.
I honestly think they need to do a night to celebrate that 2000 that Cup Run team.
Yep.
They need to bring Iggy back. They need to celebrate Conroy. They need to bring back that ragtag defense core that got them through the playoffs. Make Commodore put on a big huge wig. Bring back that afro. Like, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Because when you bring back something that was uniting and gets the fans engaged, that's what brings the passion back.
Yeah, because to me, Flames fans aren't having fun anymore. Like, and even just like what Sean mentioned with like the decades nights and stuff, like like I've started following more along with like what the Canucks are doing on social media and their different, like the different nights and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, why don't the Flames do stuff like this? And I think it has to still do with that it's now a bad cycle of corporate culture. Like they think that the people who are buying the season tickets are not going to want that kind of stuff, so they don't do it. And then you're alienating your fans that do want to do it. And yeah, I would love to see some kind of honor for that 2014 for sure. That's a great idea.
I have a potentially controversial opinion here. I think the one Flames Stanley Cup is setting a crazy standard that the organization is trying to get back to, that they can't appreciate anything else that doesn't live up to that. Whereas the Canucks, since they've never won a Stanley Cup in their 50-year history, they're willing to celebrate the great teams that didn't necessarily get it done. But the fact that the Flames had that cup in '89 and hasn't had a team that's been able to live back up to that they are not willing to celebrate the great individual performances or the great team performances of past years that didn't necessarily get the cup.
I think that's a totally valid theory on that, Chris. Like I would have never thought about that, but I think that's completely like accurate. I think that we're hanging on to that for far too long, and but like there's the generation of Flames fans now. It's like we weren't around or whatever. Like I guess I was alive at that time, but like I was 2 years old and I don't obviously remember any of that stuff. So that could be completely true. That something needs to change there. I don't even know how you go about doing that.
I'm happy you like my take. I'm curious whether Devin and Kev agree with you.
I think it's the lack of showing and having those nights and having, those celebrations kind of, emphasizes that. I do agree to an extent of your take, Chris. I just don't, the lack of just celebrating being organization in Calgary, celebrating the ups that we've had. 2004, the fact that we had a Vezina winning goaltender in Mika Kiprasov. He showed up finally, and no one thought that he would come back to Calgary ever after he left, after he retired. And the fact that he came back this year and they showed him on the Jumbotron at the Saddle Dome, that was massive. That was huge. And I think it might just take a little bit of time to get to that point where, the main core of that team is all back together. And, Kiprasov, his numbers should be retired because he was an amazing player. So, I think everybody is in agreement that the management and the ownership of the Flames need to give their head a shake and need to instead of every year having a Western night to go think outside of the box and, like Sean said, have fun with it, because it seems like everybody's tightly wound, and whether or not we are going to be successful, that there's still the fun aspect of playing hockey, of having a team in Calgary, and I think that's lost.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily 1989 that they're trying to hang on to. I feel like they're trying to hang on to an older vision of the city where it was the Calgary Stampede, and it is country music, and it is Western Night. And, Sean, those are great and wonderful things. I know that you're a country music fan, but I don't think it truly represents the city of Calgary as much as Calgary people think it does. I think that the city is a lot more diverse, and I think that where the Flames have lost that entirely. I think that it's not 89. They're hanging on to this old identity. And it's not, that identity isn't Calgary anymore. It's a different city, and they haven't caught up.
Oh, I totally agree, Kev. That's come with you've seen that with the fact that we didn't want to host an Olympics, which I think was absolutely wrong.
That was absolutely terrible.
But and then the reaction to all the whole arena issue as well. The demographics have changed in Calgary. We aren't this like yeehaw urbanized cowboys and oil workers and all that anymore. There has been a huge demographic change in Calgary, and I agree with you. The Flames have not caught up to it, and I think that's definitely part of it.
Where the Canucks are outperforming the Flames in that sort of aspect is like the fact that the Canucks do Diwali night, Chinese Lunar New Year, like those sort of events that kind of bring in the fans that aren't your homogenous, stereotypical European, white, Canadian sort of identity that the 20th century of hockey kind of built upon.
Yeah.
It's the fact that the Canucks are embracing the ethnic part of their fan base that the Flames definitely are not doing.
Yeah, like the Canucks obviously have like an idea of what actually goes on in Vancouver, and maybe like I can't speak for the city of Vancouver, but maybe the city of Vancouver has an awareness of what their identity is. And I mean, I could talk for probably hours about how I think Calgary's having a huge identity crisis about what they actually are now, because we're obviously like the Western thing I think is gone, and it's like, how do we, like, what is our thing now? But that is a discussion for another podcast at another time.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think the Lions and the Whitecaps are, not to go on this rabbit hole, but I'll just quickly go here and then we'll change the topic. The Lions and the Whitecaps are going through this very debate right now, and the Lions are off base with it in terms of the attendance, and the Whitecaps, other than that the PR disaster that was last year, their marketing this year for the team has been on point. Like, on point. They have got diverse. They've shown the diversity of their fan base. Their jerseys, they've changed their jerseys. They are absolutely on point. And I think capturing the identity of what Vancouver is. I think you're almost, it's fascinating to watch, and it's very interesting. That is an identity conversation certainly for another time, for sure. And I do think that this is an important conversation to continue. But I do think the other thing that happened this week that I do want to get into was NHL player safety. So this started when Zdeno Chara cross-checked Brendan Gallagher and got a $5,000 fine. And then Zach Kassian on Thursday, kicked Eric Charnock with a skate, and he received a 7-game suspension. And then Evander Kane on Friday elbowed Neil Pionk. How do I say his name? Pionk. And went to Twitter and basically said this. Let me find it here. He deleted this. I found it. Here we go. The fact the NHL Department of Player Safety, headed by George Parros, continues to pick and choose who and what they suspend is ridiculous. There have been countless incidents of the same nature through this season and past seasons that have gone unsuspended or fined. No one person can tell you what is or isn't a suspension in today's game. It's become a complete guess. There is a major lack of consistency with NHL Department of Player Safety, a completely flawed system in so many ways. From the suspensions to appeal rights, it's baffling to me how we as players agree to this. You can't continue to give some players a pass and throw the book at others. There has to be an outside third party making these decisions to remove the bias that transpires in this department headed by George Parros. None of this makes sense. That caused a lot of anger on social media. I did talk to an NHL insider about Evander Kane's conversation with George Parros. You guys didn't know this, but when Evander Kane was on the phone with George Parros, he was disturbed by hearing this noise, kind of this wheel of justice that was going on. I think it was on for the whole time, like a little Russian roulette about how many games he was going to be suspended for, and I do think that threw him off. So that was a joke. I thought that was funny.
Okay.
Boo.
All right.
Boo.
All right, okay. Kev. All right. Here's where I stand on this. I think the biggest issue is communication. The communication on what is suspendable and what isn't. Back when Shanahan was running that department, the communication was fantastic. You had videos explaining why they were suspensions. You had videos and then periodic videos on hits that and incidents that weren't suspensions and why. We need those back. We do not most hockey fans, and I'll say most as in like 95% of hockey fans can't distinguish what they're trying to do. Two, I think that under George Parros, I think they're trying to get away from punishing every hit as a suspension and every incident as a suspension, and they want to bring back the emotion into the game. Whether you agree or disagree with that, I think that's what they're trying to do. Three, I think I could take what Evander Kane had to say much better had he not just been handed down that suspension. If he had saw someone else get a suspension for something he disagreed with and went on that rant, I'd be fully on board. But this just sounds a little too petty for my taste. Even if he has made some good points, it just comes across as petty to me.
Okay, Devin or Heidi or Chris or
yeah, it does sound very petty. The inconsistency of the Department of Player Safety is concerning, and I think that I think Evander Kane does make a good point, and other than him being petty, that maybe a third party should be handing down the suspensions. Maybe that should be looked at. And then, there's not this whole George Parros has favoritism towards certain hits or certain people than others. And I think that that was one thing that, he did make a good point on. I think the Gassian suspension should have been a lot more. I don't think that 7 games is enough. I'd say you go ahead and make it double digits or even double 7 to get to 14 to really make a point, because that is unbelievably unexceptional and unprofessional, dangerous. Like if you didn't hit him straight in the chest, if he was up a bit higher, hitting the neck, a bit lower, hitting the gut, because there is some space in between your shoulder pads and your pants of your hockey equipment, or even if he cut his wrist by accident. Like, I don't know, there's very. I feel like Chernak was very lucky that he did not get more injured or injured at all, and it could have been a lot worse. So I think having an outsider's perspective who maybe has some sort of hockey knowledge and experience, but not to the extent as a former player, I think that's I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I think the NHL definitely does have a conflict of interest sort of situation going on, whether it's like a George Parros or even like the Gregory Campbell incident when his kid was playing and he was still an NHL disciplinarian. Like, they should have a third party handle it, just so that way there isn't this potential conflict of interest where there could be a potential bias coming into play.
I think the issue with the NHL is every league handles their suspensions internally. The issue is that it's perception is what it is, because George Parros is the head of it. It's not him. It's not just him making the decision. They've got Damien Echeverria, I believe is his last name. They've got Brian Burke's son, right? Patrick Burke, as part of it. They've got a couple others part of that. It's just George Parros is the head of it. And I think if they had like Patrick Burke or Damien as it, when they're a little more separated, I think it would come across better. But because they keep putting ex-players as the head, I think it comes across as being quote unquote more biased and more ingrained in the issues of what the league is trying to separate them out from as much as possible. So I think that might be part of the issue as well.
Heidi?
Yeah, I have nothing else more to say. I'm on the same page as everybody else on here.
I think, to me, I think the communication is part of it. I don't think it was... It's tough because I think what Kane said, I think there's some validity to it. I don't think it was the right time. I don't even think it was the right person, really, to say it, because I think he's had a history. It's part playoff time. But I think that the other thing that's throwing me off here, it was what Brian Burke... This is the old school, new school argument, but Brian Burke on Hockey Night basically saying that these suspensions, the Cassian suspension and the Chara fine was fine because nothing really happened, I think is where other people are like, no. These were two very dangerous plays that do not belong in the game. This particularly the skate kick doesn't belong in the game, and that is a very dangerous play from a guy that just came and just was suspended. Like he should have the book thrown at him, and at the very least for Chara, there should have been a the intent behind it. It's sort of this old school, new school mentality that I feel is colliding again. Yeah,
and it just comes down to I think Burke did make a good point on in terms of you do need to. I think there's the combination of the act and the quote unquote intent versus what actually happened and the result. I just think there's not quite the right balance to create the right suspension or punishment result that the public is looking for. We have you can't just punish the act, because if you punch someone in the head and nothing happens, that's completely different than if you punch someone in the head and they get knocked out and they get a concussion, right? There's just, you got to find that right balance, and I don't think the balance is there. And I think a lot of that is because of the lack of communication on what is going into these decisions.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone had anything else to add on that.
I agree with Sean in the sense that we should have those videos back, because just the explanation of it, I think, brought a lot of maybe didn't fully resolve the issue, but it just brought a lot more knowledge of where the league was coming from and why they made the decisions that they did. Whereas now it just feels totally ambiguous, and it feels totally like luck of the draw as far as the number of games someone gets suspended or the size of the fine.
Yeah, just more knowledge of that. And also, I think it's time for my weekly shot at Oilers media. I should bring that in as a segment or something. I should have music for it. But the fact that the Oilers media was basically defending Cassian for this was ridiculous. But anyway, we will not rant on that anymore. We will end it here. We will talk next week as we have run out of time. Heidi, how do we follow you?
You can follow me all over social media at Heidi Amazeballs. That's HEID Amazeballs.
Sean?
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on Twitter.
Devin?
I am GordHow09 on Twitter.
Follow him. And Chris?
I am at Schneids on all forms of social media.
And Tyler, who's reffing, is at T-Noble. I am at KEVOLE. And thanks for watching, and we will talk to you all listening. We will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.